Clover-clad hilltops crown the emerald-shaded valleys of Ireland. Centuries-old castles rise out of the misted landscapes like monuments to the ancients. Rich in legend, this country is the birthright of a strong, proud, and often warlike people. Few places on earth rival the quiet and disturbing beauty of Ireland. But in Northern Ireland, the disturbance is visible, and the troubles are very real. For more than 800 years, the Irish have been waging war on the English in an attempt to reclaim their land. More recently, Irish Catholics have been pitted against Irish Protestants, the descendants of English settlers who bought Irish land claimed by Henry VIII in the 16th century. The Irish Republican Army was formed in the early 1900s to liberate the last 6 counties of Northern Ireland, also known as Ulster, from English rule. Once respected and supported by Irish Catholics, the IRA is now a covert terrorist organization. It collaborates with its Protestant counterpart, the Ulster Defense Association, or UDA, to undermine any advancement toward reconciliation between Catholics and Protestants. The IRA has been described by political and social observers as an organization undergoing mafiaization. Its goals? Keep Catholics from getting jobs, getting ahead, getting hope. Only in this way can they fuel the prejudice against Protestants, maximize their propaganda against the British, and retain their economical, social, and political stranglehold over the people. Groups like the IRA and the UDA have been highly effective in perpetuating the level of fear and tension necessary to fuel the fires of hatred and intolerance. Belfast is a city held hostage. Miles and miles of barbed wire ensnares city blocks. People hide themselves and their businesses behind barricades. Every day, the British military patrols certain sections of the city known as the Troubles in an effort to maintain the peace. Citizens and tourists are stopped at checkpoints and searched, with good reason. Since the early 1970s, terrorist activities have caused more than 3,000 deaths, 30,000 shootings, and 20,000 bombings. Belfast is war-weary. Its people fear for their lives. The conflict in Northern Ireland is very complicated. The people are engaged in much more than a religious war. Their problems are also political, sociological, and economical. Hatred, mistrust, and intolerance are handed down through families like heirlooms. Catholics and Protestants staunchly cling to separate cultural identities and traditions. They live in separate neighborhoods, drink in separate bars, ride in separate taxis. Catholic and Protestant children attend separate schools. They learn from an early age that their situation is impossible and that to hope for change is not only unrealistic, it's disloyal. In industrialized Northern Ireland, the Protestants hold most of the jobs and own most of the businesses. Politically, they've also held the majority vote for centuries. Understandably, they're not agreeable to the prospects of losing their property or their rights as British subjects if Northern Ireland reunites with the Republic of Ireland. Constitutionally, Britain cannot withdraw from Ulster without a majority mandate, and since Protestants hold that majority, that scenario is unlikely. The Catholic population is growing steadily, and a shift in the political majority may occur one day. In the meantime, unemployment in some Catholic neighborhoods is as high as 90%, and Catholic children are left hungry and wondering why life has dealt them such a dismal hand. The people of Northern Ireland can accomplish little until mutual goodwill and an overriding desire for reconciliation are achieved between Catholics and Protestants. And that kind of change will occur only when the Irish refuse to be further victimized or used by groups like the IRA. When, as a community, their indignation rises above their fear, their attitude changes to can from cannot, and their intolerance evolves into tolerance. But how many obstacles must be overcome to help a people find a sense of worth, a sense of unity, a sense of hope? Recently, Denverites John Irwin and Dave Stark led a team of 10 Catholics and Protestants to Northern Ireland on a short-term mission for the Presbyterian Church. Their goal was to interact with Catholics and Protestants for the purpose of reconciliation through small group structures. Irwin and Stark developed a long-distance friendship with a Presbyterian pastor in Belfast named Trevor Morrow. Through letters and phone calls, they spent many hours discussing Irwin's interest in small group ministry and small group structures and their ability to elicit positive change. They told Morrow of the American passion for small group support systems like Weight Watchers, Alcoholics Anonymous, Parents Without Partners, and others. Such groups were almost unheard of in Ireland. Moreover, they convinced Morrow that small group structures could be an essential key in unlocking the closed doors of the society in Northern Ireland. Morrow offered Irwin and Stark an invitation to visit him with a team of people experienced in organizing and establishing small group support structures. For his part, Morrow would arrange an itinerary of meetings with members of Catholic and Protestant churches, government officials, and other organizations that were engaged in some form of social reform through group support systems.
There was really no perception of any bigotry or bias. I think the important reason that was perceived that way is the fact that we came as a unified team of Catholic and Protestants. It brought about a different flavor to the purpose of the mission, because we went there unified in our effort. We went there trained, and we went there with a purpose. And I think that that perception was recognized and appreciated. Small group structures in Northern Ireland and even Southern Ireland are non-existent. I think that the biggest single item we dealt with was the fact that the people themselves do not have outlets. They don't have a means by which they can interrelate on any interpersonal level with one another.
The mission team had the opportunity to travel throughout Northern Ireland and the Republic to see the work of others striving to effect social change. One of the more successful groups was the Corrymeela community north of Belfast in Ballycastle. Here, an international group of Catholics and Protestants worked together as a symbol of Christian fellowship and goodwill. In a retreat-like setting, Catholics and Protestants from Belfast and other northern cities are brought in for workshops and conferences with trained reconciliation counselors who teach them how to work for peace and understanding in their own communities. Corrymeela is also a refuge for victims of violence and offers education programs on the subject to schools, churches, and communities. The mission team observed the workings of a few other organizations that were just beginning to develop small group structures. The Prison Fellowship serves as a support system for prisoners and their families throughout the time of separation. The fellowship's principal goal is to bring the gospel to inmates irregardless of their religious or political background. The Cornerstone community is a small group of Protestants and Catholics from the West Belfast area who have joined together as a sign of hope in a divided community. The 174 Trust is a restaurant in West Belfast that sponsors a youth group and stresses the goal of reconciliation between Catholic and Protestant communities. During their short weeks in Ireland, the mission team implemented 2 weekend-long seminars to establish small group support structures, one in Belfast, the other in Dublin. The focus was on the cross-cultural effort to train individuals for Christian leadership in the Irish Church.
The most important thing is that Protestants and Catholics have to find a common ground to talk about and to interact about that is away from the direct issue that is dividing them. If you take the issue of reconciliation or the issues of Protestantism and Catholicism on directly, you will just divide them further. What they need is some kind of structure that is giving them a totally different agenda that actually will allow them to identify with one another, to understand that they come from a common humanity. What small groups allow people to do is to learn how to discuss their problems, to share their feelings in some cases, to belong and be known by other people.
In Northern Ireland, tribal lines have been drawn, paramilitary units have been created, and walls have been built to prevent understanding, religious tolerance, and peace, all in the name of peace. Some Irish children are taught how to build a bomb without remorse, how to kill a family without regret, how to die instead of how to live. That's no way for a child to grow up.